Hey, Paul, I'm so happy to have you on my podcast, actually on Andy's and my podcast, talking about your inner edge. But before we go into the depths of that, tell me who you are. Obviously, I know, but tell us.
Of course, happy to share a bit. So, my name's Paul. I am co-founder and of Morningcrunch, a new media company that has been around now for 2 years. Before that, I did a first media company venture that was also at the sort of intersection between AI and media, and have always been close to journalism, to writing, to all these different variants of getting good and insightful content out to readers who actually care about it. I think that's sort of been the theme. And located in Berlin, traveling a lot these days, but
You should better do. It's freaking hot out there, so better get away to a nice place with a nice breeze. Hopefully.
I wish. Not, we're not yet there in terms of startup journey. We're still on the office, 6 days a week in the office kind of side of things. So
Exactly. So I was super excited to bring you on this podcast because for me, you're like one of the role models of someone, let's say, swimming against the crowd. And that has been a little bit like the story of my life, always going a little bit against what everyone is doing. And I think it's interesting because media is not an obvious topic to be a founder in. And I think you had also your experiences in your seed funding round.
Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, we knew this going in, right? I mean, if you look at the list of the 10 topics that VCs are interested in, media will not be on the list. And if you go to the list of the top 100 topics, you will probably not find media either. There are very few VCs that have media exposure. There are very few VCs that have media background. And we knew this coming in. So from this first funding round, we've always been looking more for angel networks and people who come from that industry who are keen to see it develop and grow. And then we also had a lot of conversations with VC GPs and partners at funds who find it very interesting because what we are doing in a way is, and I mean, you can judge this much better from the other side, but like doing something like media, which technically should have, it's a huge industry, billion-dollar industry, should be completely disrupted by AI, is supposed to change completely and transform in every way possible. There's not a lot of people looking at the topic, and hence valuations are not crazy as they are in other areas. So it's an interesting niche kind of thing, right? Because it brings together a few theses of that VCs invest on, and at the same time, it's something that's quite untapped. So I think, we took some time to find the right people, I'd say, but that's definitely.
So I think that's very interesting because, I mean, then two questions. How does it come that you're brave enough maybe to, swim in the other direction? And also, how do you keep yourself motivated when you get a lot of no's? Because that's maybe something.
Interesting enough, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
people.
yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to jump in, but
No. But people want to know, right? So, like, how do you keep your hopes up?
exactly. I mean, to be very fair with starting with the second question, we didn't really receive much no's. We just knew that the pool was very small. So to be honest, in the end, the first conversation we had with a VC was the one that ended up leading our rounds, and it still is the closest. So, but I think, let's say that was a point of potential failure there already in a way, right? Because there would not have been a lot of other VCs that we would have been able to talk to. So I think it was very clear from the very get-go that there are only a bunch of them that could be relevant, and so
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Because obviously you were then very aware. You knew what was happening. You were very realistic about your chances. And I think at least that's sometimes something unseen with a lot of founders, maybe to be too naive and really actually don't try to understand what the other side wants to see. I mean, we bloody journalists, VCs who cannot go into media, and maybe then misinterpreting the starting point. And maybe you were just very smart about knowing what was coming.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because I also have founder friends who send out, or like who try, when they raise a round, they reach out to, I don't know, 150 VCs, and always go with the same email that says, "Hi, we are a high, yeah, sort of high potential, quickly growing startup." It's like, yeah, well, I mean, cool, but it's the same like LinkedIn cold email or cold messaging. If you just have a generic thing, it's not going to work. And I think looking at VCs not as like VC equal VC, like, in terms of like they're all the same. But if you look at it and say, okay, so there are some VCs that obviously have done certain things, or they have GPs in the company that are obviously interested in certain things. And if you look deeper into it and try and get a feel for it, and specifically try and talk to other founders who have actually raised from these VCs, which is what we did extensively, you get a feeling of, okay, these guys could be interested in what we are doing, but only if we pitch it a certain way. So if we come through the door and say, like, I don't know, we are going to save journalism, that will not work with certain VCs. It might work with other ones, more impact driven, but we didn't go there. But like, I think it's always my personal take and my personal experience, as well as like, I'd rather have a really short list of 4 or 5 VCs and really try and understand what they do, talk to the people, get a sense of where their head's at and what they're looking at, and then pitch to them, rather than go out with this big list and say, like, guys, I'm just going to email everyone. That's just not going to work. And it's also, at least in my sense, going to actually lower your chances, because VCs talk a lot. And if they see that, you've sort of just gone with a standard approach of emailing everyone, people hear about it, and I don't think it really helps you in making your case, to be honest. That's my
And
side.
really,
Yeah.
and it's really demotivating.
Yeah.
So actually, I must say what you're saying is almost like a master class for anyone who stick to fundraise. No, really, because I'm sometimes so surprised how many founders can be so unprepared when they're speaking to partners or funds. And I also do recommend, especially my own portfolio companies, hey, only talk to 5 people, prepare that very well, and then just see what you get there. Don't go into the mass. You will get the mass anyway if this looks good. As you said, I mean, as you said, because people talking. So I think this like very targeted approach is absolutely. I mean, it's a masterclass in sales as well. And I think in the end of the day, fundraising is sales, right? So I think you're spot on.
Thanks. And I think it worked for us. And I also think AI is the absolute antidote to this, because what I also see, and you just mentioned sales, I mean, we have the same approach when we do sales in the company. We focus on very few clients and really try and think of ways we can actually be valuable and supportive, and actually do something that means something to them. But what I see a lot around us is people just, because AI enables you to send out 150 emails, or 150,000 emails if you want. And people do that, and then they come back and they say, like, oh, I'm only getting these, sorry to say, like, these shit deals on terrible terms. It's like, yeah, well, I mean, the other way around, you wouldn't respond to a message like that, or at least you wouldn't think of it very highly. And I think the same thing is true in fundraising. I think the one difference, coming back to us as like a media case, I have quite a few friends who do really VC geared stuff, like the sort of B2B SaaS for German Mittelstand. Yeah, exactly, with AI and all of it. And some of them have, really done incredible rounds, and very proud of a lot of friends. But they have this advantage that once they're in the field and they do AI enhanced B2B startups,
Yes.
VCs come to them, right? And this is something that is great, but it's something that if you're doing something outside the box, you should not count on, because if you're this hot AI startup in Berlin and you're doing a fantastic job, you will certainly have VCs approach you. If you're doing what we're doing, it will take longer to get to that point, I think, because the chances that the 2 or 3 partners in Germany that are interested in stuff that we do actually reach out, like, obviously, is much slimmer than the big crowd of investors. What I would say, and this is maybe an interesting topic as well, the fact that we're doing something that's different, and the fact that we approach things a bit different, I think puts us on the map with partners who are interested in actually diving deeper into topics, right? And I think it's more of like an emotional, not emotional, but like I sense that they actually they're interested in what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I think doing something very different is quite interesting to VCs at a certain point.
Amazing. So I think that was the part of like, okay, that's how you actually did it, which I think is super impressive. And however, where does the appetite comes from to do something outside the box? So who's Paul as a character, as a person?
Yeah, I think it's definitely. I mean, I wouldn't say it was so much of a conscious choice. I think my background is in media, and I've done media before. And um, AI obviously has been a technology that transforms the space completely. I studied in the UK and studied actually AI and how it changes international law and all this stuff. So it's always been around me. I always thought of it as something very interesting. And when the opportunity came, I thought, this is something I really want to do. And in a way, I think that's what building companies should be about. Or
Yeah.
everyone can build for whatever reasons they want to build a company. That's fine. But like, I personally feel that doing something because I care about the topic and I find it interesting is a great motivation. And I'm sure there are many motivations to build a company, but for me, that was something. And unfortunately, the topic is not the hot stuff. So got to live with it. Like I think at the end of the day, maybe I would have been in a happier place now. I don't know if I was said, okay, I'm going to do, I don't know, dual use advanced technology of something, and maybe that would have been great. I didn't, but my heart was set.
I mean, I do think that let's say the greatest stories are anyway the ones who are not straight, right? And I do think that it's absolutely a myth that the straight stories lead to the success. I think it's a very small percentage, and I've seen also in our portfolio so many let's say companies succeed. Like, I mean, I was very impressed by the exit of Believe. I don't know if you heard the music license company, which went through the roof after many, many, many years. So I do think that, I mean, so many successful stories are not written straight and clear, and you never know. And it's always, in the end of the day, the discipline of the founder and the excitement around the topic, and actually also what problem you solve with the topic and what you can do with it. And I think that's also something very interesting with Morningcrunch, because I do believe that media is on a turning point right now. We all know that so much media maybe is not written by humans anymore. We do know how much media is influenced by political interests, and still people obviously seeking for content and right information. And I think that's something like that's where you cut in. So maybe you tell us more about like what problem do you solve with Morningcrunch?
And great question. So I think certainly, as you mentioned, there is a hunger for good and insightful journalism and content, if you want to call it that, right? And people really, they do want to read things, or maybe not read them necessarily, but hear them, or they just want, people love receiving information and getting a sense of getting ahead in what they're doing, right? I think there's always this sense of progress and achievement and yeah, and kind of like reaching your potential a bit more by actually opening your gaze and seeing new things. And I think the problem that we solve quite concretely is that you have a generation in Germany specifically, but I think this largely applies to Europe, that is going to be the wealthiest generation in history, the ones who are now early 30s, and the ones who will inherit an incredible amount of wealth. If you look at the great wealth transfer, there is going to be a lot of money that will be transferred. And so you have these people who are, again, like the richest generation in history, and the information that they trade on or that they invest on is, on the one hand, is sort of the Instagram finfluencer world, which partially is fine. There are good people there, but there's also a bunch of nonsense. And then on the other end, you have the media outlets, the established traditional news publishers that are very good in how they report, but they are also, let's say, not really, they don't really play that much of a role for that generation anymore, because either subscription prices are high or the way the content is presented is not something that they really feel a lot about. So you have this generation, they're hungry for insights, for perspectives, even for advice. And then that's where we come in. And so what we do today is we write and publish 6 daily newsletters that are on finance topics in the widest sense, so ranging from stock markets to real estate and so forth. And we don't give advice in the sense of like invest now and get rich, but what we do is present what's going on in the world and how does it affect you and what does it mean for your own investments. And we do it in a very, I would say, approachable, lighthearted way without being sort of ridiculous or sort of over the top. And I think that's sort of the real sweet spot of having very powerful content, but also doing it in a way that is actually fun to read. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was fascinating for me when I got a little bit in crypto, which I never really deeply invested in, but and I mean, now I think the time is also a little bit over, so to say. But let's see. I mean, never say never. However, I guess you're better expert than me on. But I thought like how well some of the CryptoNet newsletters were really like packaging great information and making it readable and exciting to be part of the crowd. And I think that's something which is really a art to do. So so how do you, I mean, how do you do it on a day-to-day? Because I was so impressed how these newsletters were. So, I mean, there was basically entertainment with a very, very high level of information, and that's an art to do and to produce this on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and we have a great team that work on it.
Yes.
Obviously there's a very strong human component. We have spent the last year and a half working on our sort of proprietary AI content management system and AI tooling that it allows us to I would say, based on more than 1,000 issues that we've published so far, help us on selection of topics, help us on certain ways we can present stuff. And it's sort of learned. I mean, again, as with a lot of this AI that you see floating around, obviously, this is not something that is irreplicable or that is completely, I'd say we didn't build our own LLM or anything, but I think we've built a very powerful and solid tool for a very vertical topic, which is this exactly what we want to do, out of the finance space. And I think so AI does help a lot, but you need humans in the loop because otherwise it's going to be a disaster, and that there's no way you can automate the stuff. And you mentioned it earlier on. People, I think, make that mistake and they push out stuff that's completely AI generated. We had the case with Handelsblatt, the media company, that put out a completely AI generated article. It's people see that stuff and it does so much to your reputation. It's horrific. And so I think, and yeah, AI plays a role, but at the end of the day, you need people who are, have a good sense of humor and actually understand the topics.
But I mean, like, I really would like. I'm impressed. How do you measure, let's say, your quality as well? Because you're putting out all this content, and then people just reading it, and they don't have a real interaction. Let's say I was a B2C founder, and I always needed to go into the clubs to see how people were working out and how much they liked it. And we talked to our people who visiting our clubs. And then when I did Vaha, and they were actually sitting at home and working out, I was kind of like detached from my actual customer. So how do you get in touch and know what your customer wants?
Great question. Fantastic question. And it's funny because you send out the stuff and there's like, 6-figure amount of people who receive this and read it.
Yeah.
And then obviously what happens is you get responses. So a lot of people email back, which is also a funny generational thing because I think you and I, we sort of have a way of writing emails and, we just write them and that's normal. But then you have the guys, we have quite a few readers who are also like early 20s and they'll write you like 6 emails in one thread. Like,
really?
Yeah, the way they would write like a text message, right? So you would say like, hey guys, next email, I have a question, next email, and you're like, this is a generational thing, right? Because they just use communication differently. So that's really interesting to see. That's
crazy.
But so the people who write to us are certainly one group that we talk to and we try and get a sense of. And what we really see is even everyone's super happy if we respond to them. It's really interesting. People sometimes
Yes, people love that.
people would complain and say, "Oh, you guys are writing down Palantir. I love Palantir," and then you write back and you give a sort of explanation, and people are like, "Oh, sorry guys, I was so grumpy this morning," and you have a proper conversation. That's really great. And the other thing is we actively reach out to them. So we try and reach out to the top readers. We try and reach out randomly to readers. We sit down for qualitative interviews. We do calls. We talk to them. And then the other thing we do, which was fantastic on email, which is harder in clubs and gyms and stuff like that, we can A/B test so much.
Yeah,
Because,
very interesting.
and as we can send out 50 different emails across
Yes.
our readers every morning and see where people interact, where people click, how they whether they unsubscribe, whether they forward it, all these things we can measure. This is the beauty of email. It's incredibly data driven if you do it right, I'd say.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's actually quite interesting learning also for founders who are working with these kind of like products, right? How to manage that. Amazing. It's I think it's an incredible business and super fascinating. And where do you want to go with it? And what are the next steps? I mean, I know that you have some products in the pipeline or products. So
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think what we want to do, we started out with the newsletter, which is, a format that I think now is gaining traction in Europe. It's certainly center stage in the US already, at least if you look at the creator economy. And what we want to do is build Morningcrunch into a not just a newsletter, but like a finance media brand, an finance advisory brand. And so what we are working on a lot is new products that have more personalization in them. So what we're doing right now is actually building an app that allows you to connect your portfolio, your bank account to us, and we can actually look at what you have invested in. We can see even your crypto investments if you want to share them, and then actually provide you with insights on a daily basis and um, push you the stuff that's actually relevant to your investments without you having to sort of wade through hundreds of sources every morning. And so that's something we're working on. So high rate of personalization. We're also working on a few other products, and I think they all come together with like trying to provide that sort of guidance along that investment journey to those who.
could I also say like, I'm a beginner, I have nothing. Tell me what I should invest in.
Sure. Yeah, no, we can't do that. We're not going to tell you what to invest in for legal reasons, but also because we don't want to. Yeah, because we honestly, I think this is a really, really personal thing. And so at the end of the day, what we will do if you are not yet invested is that we provide you with the most insightful and most sort of basic knowledge that you need to actually navigate the stock market or other asset classes. And so, we're definitely not really for the super beginners. So we don't have a lot of people who are completely new. And I think the real value of what we're building now is if you have, I don't know, NVIDIA in your stock, NVIDIA stock in your portfolio, and we send you a push notification the night before the earnings and can say, hey, NVIDIA has earnings tomorrow. This is what you should watch out for. This is what we expect. This is how the market is pricing all of this. This is what it will mean for your investments. I think this is stuff that's actually helpful. And then if we say, your NVIDIA stock has just gone down 5%, don't worry. This is how we look at it. Here's an analysis. Those are things I think that just help people learn more about how they want to invest. And I think that's where we want to go.
Yes. I mean, I think that's super fascinating because I think there are so many incredible good sources of information, but it's really, I think, for someone normal who has kids and job and everything, it's very hard to consume all this. And I think the more personalization you offer, the better you will be able to kind of like effectively invest your time, right? And I think that will make people being probably very sticky on your product, right?
Yeah, and I think also this peace of mind to know that there is someone who will, sort of keep me in the loop if something happens with my investments, and who will send me a warning signal if there's anything that's really, changing fundamentally. I think that just gives you a bit of peace of mind and a bit of, maybe even space to think about other stuff more, right? And I think that's a value in itself.
Amazing. And do you use it yourself?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we're still beta testing a lot, but yes,
Yeah.
I love it, and I'm a big fan. Otherwise, I don't think I would build it. I think again, this comes back to sort of
Yes,
building things that you would use yourself or that you would enjoy using yourself.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's super cool. And like what I can imagine also is it's a little bit different is like how you build your teams and how you work with the team, because I mean obviously in a normal company it would be very much on kind of like sales, right? Sales numbers and performance KPIs. So I mean, how do you manage to build a team in such a business? Because it's also a little bit like an artist business, right?
Yes, exactly. You need the artisans, the ones who have a feeling for humorous content and ways to engage readers. So I think it's a really interesting mix, really, in the team, of people who are more on the craftsmanship side of things and the more journalistic side, and then we also definitely have the sales and the I'd say operations power that we need to actually build a company, because at the end of the day, we obviously don't want to just be a journalism shop. We want to build a company, so there needs to be a bit of pressure on that, and that's something that I spend a lot of my time on, to be honest, building relationships and partnerships and trying to get us ahead as a company. And so, yeah, in terms of teams, we are very distributed at this point. People working across Germany in different places. As it's something that we have talked about in the team and said we want to spend more time together in the same place. So I think that's something that we'll probably do, and but I think honestly, this is something that you learn as you go along, what works best, even at different stages in the company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine. And what is your next, let's say, big milestone?
Wonderful question. I think so. We're currently at 200,000 subscriptions. I think the next milestone is definitely 500,000. That's something we want to do quite soon. And then, to be honest, the release of the app will be the most interesting thing for us, because we will see how users interact with this, and it's something that's not been built, and it's not something that's on the market yet. And I'm super excited to see how that goes and how people accept it and how they interact with it.
Amazing. And getting back to your fundraising story, like, have you thought about like how you want to monetize it, or
Yes.
if and when?
No, I mean, we're currently profitable on the sort of the core business, right? Which is very much ad revenue driven. So that puts us in a comfortable, I'd say, somewhat
Yeah.
comfortable spot. Obviously, we're not,
Yeah, of course.
we're still starting up, but I think so that's a really nice spot to be in. With the app, it will be a subscription based model, so that changes the infrastructure a bit, because currently, the partners are the ones who are financing a lot of what we do. Then it's a different way of working. So the real B2C subscription business will be slightly different, and I'm yeah, very excited to get that off the ground. And I think seeing how what people are actually willing to pay as well, I think will be a super interesting thing to learn.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a more, let's say, structural interest, because I think this will be, let's say, the question of like how much does the user or reader values that specific curated content versus all the stuff you can get for free or not, right? So I think you're defining with that also a new category. So that's gonna be an interesting play.
Exactly. And it will be interesting to see, I think, also in terms of what the other players are doing in the market, how this whole field will evolve, right? Personal finance, because I think a lot of brokers are really struggling with the reality that a lot of their core product at this point has become interchangeable. Um, and I think, at the end of the day, yes, you can differentiate through UX, and maybe these guys have 13,000 stocks on the platform, and these guys have 11,000, and so that. But this is not going to really drive the big divide, and this is not going to be the differentiator. I think the brokers also, they're looking at how can they build trust and brand. I think those are the things that matter most, and so I think they're also looking at how one of the best ways to drive trust is through very solid content and very strong analysis, and so they're also going in that space, and I think that will be an interesting mix to see how they evolve as well, and how that space changes.
And what is your, to the end, a long-term dream or vision? Do you want to become the biggest media house in Germany?
Is by far in Europe. No, I do think
Europe.
yes, we're definitely looking at Europe. We're looking at internationalization. I very confident that we can build something very cool in Germany. But I think the bigger story and the bigger ambition, of course, is to build something that is Europe wide. And I think that setting not just within the newsletter space, but in that finance media space, and really close, really interactive with people and that whole generation. I think it'll be a very interesting media house if this all works out the way we plan it. I think it will be, it was certainly the place that the one of the most interesting generations in history gets together, and I think that's where we want to be.
Okay, I have to ask you the last question because I think that's super interesting. My kids, okay, let's say my son is not reading that much anymore. So do you see a difference in the generational shifts now? How much they read and not, and how do you think about that in the future as well?
It's interesting. What we see is that actually the young ones are reading quite a lot again.
Yeah,
Because they
I
are,
thought so.
they are just tired of all the noise, to be very honest. I think there's just so much, and reading is something that feels like you're actually doing something for your brain, and it
Yes.
draws attention, and I think it still is the best way to focus attention on one thing for some time. And so we are seeing the very young ones read. We have the sort of 30 to 40-year-olds who also would love to hear it, and they're more the podcast generation. So I think there's a generational difference there.
Isn't it funny that you probably have a little bit of a dip, right? That you have the younger ones high, then you have a dip, and then you have, let's say, the slightly older ones. I think it's also probably because those people are very busy in their careers and with kids or relationships or something. So that's natural, but I think it's great. For you guys to see that actually the youngers are, a growing customer group for you.
Absolutely. And I think what's interesting, and this is just my thesis, no data, just a hunch, but I think they've also just grown up with very fast-paced social media, a lot of AI slop, and I think just there's a certain value and luxury in actually reading something. Even our case, you can read the briefing in less than 5 minutes, right? So it's not like we're not reading
Hours.
we're not talking like War and Peace, Tolstoy kind of stuff. This is, very digestible. So I think, and there is some value in there for people who are just surrounded by, I don't know, 4-second, if at all, videos on social and a lot of AI stuff here and there, and just a very fast-paced life. And I think that's interesting to see. And it's also something that I think, a lot of people don't really expect from that generation, and I think that's a nice thing to actually prove people wrong about the next generation.
I think that's a very beautiful closing note to this podcast. Thank you so much, Paul, for telling your story. And I think it's very inspirational to inspire founders to maybe do companies outside the box and outside what VCs want to see and really follow their passion. That's, I think, great.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and for having an open ear in the space to actually tell that story. And I think I hope it helps people to go their own way.
I think so. Absolutely. You're clearly a role model.
Sure. Thank you so much, Valerie.
Okay.